That was the moment Evelyn knew she was done. Not angry. Not heartbroken. Just done. The way you're done with a coat that no longer fits, that you've been wearing out of habit long after it stopped keeping you warm. She was lying in a hospital bed in Kelowna General, 41 years old, a drainage tube still taped to her side from the surgery 2 days before, and her phone was buzzing on the bedside table. She already knew who it was before she looked. She'd known the way you know a storm is coming, not from looking at the sky but from the ache in your bones. It was her husband. Derek's name lit up the screen. She let it ring, then it rang again. She picked up. "Hey," he said. "Not how are you, not you feeling better, just, hey." The same voice he used when he wanted to know where the remote was. "Hey," she said back. "So listen, my parents are coming over Saturday. You know how my mom is about the house." Evelyn stared at the ceiling. The fluorescent light above her bed had a flicker in it, barely perceptible, the kind of thing that would drive you slowly insane if you had to look at it long enough. "I'm still in the hospital, Derek." I know. But they said you might be out by Friday, right? So if you're out Friday, you'd have Saturday morning." She hung up. She didn't throw the phone. She didn't cry. She just set it face down on the blanket and looked at that flickering light for a long, long time. And that was when she decided. To understand what she decided, and why it took her so long to get there. You have to understand what Evelyn's life looked like before that hospital room. You have to go back to the beginning, to the version of her that existed before Derek, before the mortgage in Kelowna, before the years that had a way of stacking up so quietly. You didn't notice their weight until you couldn't straighten your back anymore. Evelyn Marsh had grown up in Fredericton, New Brunswick, the second of 3 daughters, born to a pharmacist father and a mother, who taught piano out of their living room every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. It was a small, ordered life, the kind where you knew your neighbors and they knew you, where the church potluck was a genuine social event, where ambition was considered a little suspicious if worn too openly. She had worn it openly anyway. Evelyn was the kind of girl who read books she wasn't assigned, who argued with her history teacher about things that didn't technically matter to the curriculum, who had gotten into the nursing program at Dalhousie, not because it was expected of her, but because she genuinely wanted to understand how bodies worked, how they broke, how they could sometimes be put back together. She loved it. That was the thing people forgot about Evelyn later, that there was a version of her who had loved something specific and worked hard for it, and felt useful in a way that had nothing to do with anyone else's comfort. She met Derek Calloway at a cousin's wedding in Halifax when she was 24. He was 30, which felt very adult, and he had a way of giving you his full attention in a room full of people that made you feel like the only real thing present. He was a civil engineer from Kelowna who had come out east for the wedding because his university roommate had married Evelyn's cousin, and the two of them had ended up talking on the back porch for 3 hours about everything and nothing. And when he asked if he could take her out the next day, she had said yes without hesitating. They did long distance for 8 months. Then he asked her to move to Kelowna. She said yes. She gave up her position at the QEII Health Sciences Center, packed 2 suitcases and her nursing textbooks, and flew across the country to a city where she knew no one except Derek. Looking back, she would think, that was the first door I walked through without noticing it close behind me. In Kelowna, she found a nursing position at the hospital, and for a while things were good, genuinely good, not the polished surface version that comes later when you're trying to convince yourself. Derek was attentive. He cooked on weekends. He called her when he said he would. She made friends through work, a small circle of nurses who met for wine on Thursday evenings at a place on Bernard Avenue that has since been replaced by a smoothie bar. They got married when she was 26. The wedding was in Kelowna because Derek's family was there, because it was easier, because Evelyn had already learned by then that things went more smoothly when she let the path of least resistance carry her. Her parents came out from Fredericton. Her mother cried. Her father shook Derek's hand and said quietly, "Take care of her," and Derek had nodded like a man who meant it. The first year was fine. The second year, Evelyn got pregnant, and that was when the shape of things started to shift. So gradually, she almost didn't see it. She took her maternity leave and then extended it, because childcare in Kelowna was expensive, and the hours were hard and Derek made enough, and it was supposed to be temporary. Temporary had a way of becoming permanent if you didn't guard against it. She knew that now. She hadn't known it then. Her daughter Isla was born in October. Then their son Rhett, 2 years after. By the time Rhett started school, Evelyn had been out of nursing for 6 years. She had tried to go back twice. The first time, Derek said he needed her home more while the kids were small. The second time, his mother, a woman named Florence, who spoke in observations that landed like instructions, had mentioned at Sunday dinner that children needed their mothers present, especially in these years, and Evelyn had let the idea go quiet inside her the way you let a candle burn down. She became very good at the life she had instead. She was organized. She was efficient. She kept the house the way Florence liked it for Sunday dinners, handled all the school logistics, drove Isla to swimming and Rhett to hockey, managed the grocery ordering and the dental appointments and the service calls for the furnace, and the correspondence with Derek's accountant during tax season because Derek found it stressful. She became, in other words, invisible in the way that very competent people sometimes do. The things she managed never went wrong, so they were never noticed. They simply happened, like oxygen, like gravity, like all the things you only understand the value of once they're gone. Derek noticed her in other ways. When dinner wasn't ready when he got home. When the house was louder than he liked. When she forgot to return his dry cleaning before an early morning meeting. He didn't yell. Derek never yelled. He had a cooler method. A particular silence, a way of sighing, that communicated profound disappointment. A tone he used when he said her name that made her feel like a student caught unprepared. She had stopped having Thursday evenings with her friends around year 4. It had just become complicated to arrange. Derek wasn't good at being alone with the kids, or rather, he found it unreasonably taxing, and the arrangement always came with enough subtle friction that it was easier not to. Her friends had stopped asking eventually. That was the thing about that kind of isolation. It looked, from the outside, like a choice you kept making. Nobody came to collect you from it. Her parents called every Sunday. Her mother would ask about the kids, ask about Derek, ask about how are you really, and Evelyn would say, "Fine, Mom, everything's fine." Because what else do you say when you can't articulate the specific problem, when there are no bruises, when on paper everything is what it's supposed to be? "You seem tired," her mother said one Sunday, the year Rhett turned 7. "I am tired," Evelyn said. "But it's fine." "You always say that." "Because it always is." She hung up and stood in the kitchen for a while afterward, the Sunday roast cooling on the counter, listening to Derek in the other room watching the Canucks game, and she thought, "Am I? Is it?" She didn't let herself stay too long with the question. The pain started the winter. Evelyn turned 40. At first, she thought it was her gallbladder. She'd read enough about it to know the symptoms. The particular way it announced itself after fatty meals, the dull ache under the right side of the ribs. She mentioned it to Derek once and he said maybe you should eat better, which was Derek's way of not engaging with something that inconvenienced him to think about. She made an appointment with her GP doctor, Rosario, a practical woman in her 50s, who had been Evelyn's doctor for 8 years, and who had over time developed a specific expression she wore when she was worried about something she hadn't fully confirmed yet. She wore that expression during Evelyn's appointment. The blood work came back with some numbers that required follow-up. An ultrasound confirmed there was something on her liver. A biopsy told them what the something was. It was a hepatocellular lesion, operable, caught at a stage that gave Evelyn a fighting chance, though fighting chance was doing a lot of work in that sentence. She sat in Dr. Rosario's office with Derek beside her and listened to the options. Surgery first, then assessment, possibly chemotherapy, depending on what the surgery showed. In the car on the way home, Derek was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Well, we'll figure it out." She wanted to cry. Not from the diagnosis. She'd had a few days to process that on her own, having gotten the preliminary results before this official meeting. She wanted to cry because "we'll figure it out" was so insufficient, so flat, so completely unlike what she needed from him in that moment. She needed him to pull over the car and hold her. She needed him to say, "I'm scared too," or "I'm so sorry," or "I'm not going anywhere." He didn't do any of those things. He said they'd figure it out, and then he turned on the radio, and Evelyn watched the Okanagan landscape scroll past her window and made a decision not to fall apart until she was alone in the bathroom that evening. The surgery was scheduled for March. Her parents flew in from Fredericton. Her mother insisted, and for once Evelyn didn't argue, couldn't argue, needed her mother in the room even though she was 41 years old and had been telling her mother she was fine for 15 years. Her mother, Anne, was a small woman who had always been physically smaller than Evelyn, but somehow managed to take up the right kind of space. She made tea without being asked. She sat with Evelyn the night before the surgery and held her hand and didn't try to fill the silence with reassurances. Evelyn cried in a way she hadn't cried in years, the ugly, gasping kind, the kind that comes when you've been holding something in too long. "I'm so tired, Mom," she said, "and I don't just mean the cancer." Her mother had looked at her for a long moment. "I know, sweetheart," she said very quietly. "I know." The surgery went well, as surgeries go. Evelyn woke up in recovery with a sensation like someone had rearranged her insides, which was accurate, and a thirst that felt geological in its depth. A nurse she didn't know held her hand for a moment while she oriented herself. She thought hazily, "This is what I used to be." Her mother was in the waiting room. Her father was in the waiting room. Derek had gone home to take Rhett to hockey. He had texted her, or rather had texted to her phone, which was with her mother, "Tell her surgery went well. I'll be by tonight." Rhett had practice. Her mother had not shown her the text until 3 days later. By then, Evelyn already knew, the way she knew most things about her marriage, not from direct information but from the absence of certain things. Derek visiting in the early hours. Derek not being the first face she saw when she opened her eyes. He came in the evening of the surgery day, smelling faintly of the coffee from Tim Hortons on Ellis Street, which was the one closest to the hospital, and also the one closest to the arena where Rhett practiced. He sat in the chair beside her bed and told her that Rhett had scored a goal in the scrimmage, which was good. Rhett was working hard this season, and he squeezed her hand once, and she could see him cataloging the tubes and the monitors with the particular discomfort of a person who finds illness threatening, as if illness were contagious in some social way, as if being near it meant admitting vulnerability. "You look pale," he said. "I had surgery this morning," she said. "Right. No, I know. I just meant," he didn't finish the sentence. "He stayed 40 minutes. He said he'd be back the next day." He was back the day after that, for an hour. Her mother and father were there every day, morning until the hospital sent them home. On the 4th day, her parents had to fly back to Fredericton. Her father had a specialist appointment, could not be rescheduled. Her mother cried at the elevator, holding Evelyn's face in both hands. "Call me. Anytime. Any hour." "I know, Mom. I will." And, Evelyn. Her mother paused, pressed her lips together, then said something careful. "You don't have to make decisions right now about anything, but you're allowed to make them." Evelyn wasn't entirely sure what her mother meant. Later, she would understand precisely. The 5th day, Derek didn't come. He texted another to her phone message, which a nurse relayed. Something at work, a deadline, he'd come tomorrow. He sent Isla to bring her some things from home. Isla was 16, still in high school, and she walked in with a bag containing a clean nightgown, Evelyn's phone charger, and a library book Evelyn had finished weeks ago. She sat on the edge of the bed with the careful guilt of someone who didn't know what she'd done wrong, but sensed she was somehow adjacent to a failure. "How's your dad?" Evelyn asked, because she didn't want Isla to feel that weight. "Fine," Isla said. "Busy. How's school?" "Fine." They sat together for a while, watching something on Isla's phone. A cooking video, Evelyn remembered. Somebody making cabbage rolls in a small kitchen somewhere in Eastern Europe. And Evelyn thought how strange it was that this was actually one of the better moments she'd had all week. Just sitting with her daughter watching someone else make food. No one needing anything from her. The 6th day, Rhett called on the hospital room phone. Evelyn's cell was dead again, and said, in his 14-year-old voice that was in the process of becoming something else, "Hey Mom, are you coming home soon? There's no food and I have a tournament this weekend." She didn't say what she wanted to say. She said she'd try, and hung up and looked at the ceiling. Then her phone lit up. Derek. She knew before she answered. Something in the timing, something in the particular sequence of days that had led to this moment, the way certain things accumulate until they become undeniable. "Hey," he said. "Hey. So, listen, my mom's been calling. The house is kind of a mess and she wants to come see you this weekend, and you know how she gets about Derek." The kitchen specifically, because last time she said Derek. He paused. "I'm in the hospital," she said, slowly, clearly, like a fact she was reading aloud. "I had surgery 6 days ago. I haven't been home in 6 days. I cannot clean the kitchen from here." "I know that," he said, and there was an edge in his voice now, the familiar edge of a man who felt he was being made to feel unreasonable. "I'm not asking you to do it now. I'm saying when you get home. Your mother can come to a messy house," Evelyn said, "or she cannot come." Silence. "I just think," Derek said, "that you're being a little." She hung up. She lay there in the quiet of the room for a very long time. Outside the window, the lake was gray and still. Kelowna in early spring had that particular quality of light, thin, watery, hopeful in spite of itself. She watched a crow land on the window ledge and regard her briefly with one dark eye before flying off. And in that room, in that bed, with the drainage still doing its work and the monitors doing theirs, Evelyn made the decision her mother had said she was allowed to make. She was going home. She would get better. And then she was leaving, not in anger, not to punish Derek or to prove anything to anyone. She was leaving because she had spent 15 years becoming invisible to the person who was supposed to see her most clearly. And she had nearly died, And even nearly dying had not changed that. Not the hour he missed, not the tasks he prioritized, not the phone call about the kitchen. And she understood finally, in a way that settled into her like a stone settling into still water, that nothing would change it. This was who Derek was, and she had been choosing it, day after day, door after door, saying fine, and it's okay, and I'll manage. And it had taken a hospital bed and a phone call about her mother-in-law's feelings about the kitchen to make her understand that she had never actually consented to this life. She had just stopped refusing it. She called her mother. Anne picked up on the second ring. It was after 10 in Fredericton. I'm going to be okay, Evelyn said, and when I'm better, I'm leaving him. A pause. Then very quietly, okay, I don't want to talk about it yet. Okay, I just needed to say it out loud. I know, her mother said. I heard you. I've been hearing you for a long time. She went home on day 8 under her own power, which felt important. Derek picked her up, which was something. He carried her bag. He made sure she got up the front steps. He made her a cup of tea, which she didn't ask for but which she drank. And for a moment in the kitchen, standing in the mid-morning light, she thought of how much easier it would be to stay. How familiar. How much she already knew every creak of this house, every pattern in the linoleum, every particular sound the furnace made on cold nights. She drank the tea. She thanked him for the tea. She went upstairs and slept for the rest of the afternoon. Over the following weeks, she healed. She was good at that, efficient, disciplined about it, took her medications at the right times, walked the distances Dr. Rosario recommended, ate what she was supposed to eat. Derek kept his distance in the particular way he had when he sensed she was in a state he didn't have tools to manage. He wasn't cruel during this time. He was simply himself, which was its own kind of answer. Isla brought her tea sometimes. Rhett checked in the way teenage boys do, briefly from doorways, but genuinely. She loved them without condition, which was different from loving the life that contained them. She understood the difference now. She called a lawyer in April, a woman named Cheryl, who practiced family law on Water Street, and who had a direct manner that Evelyn found instantly comforting. She laid out the situation in the same calm voice she'd used to lay out patient assessments once, years ago. Assets, mortgage, children's ages, years of marriage. You're in a reasonable position, Cheryl told her. It'll take time, but you'll be okay. I know, Evelyn said. I just needed someone outside of it to confirm that, she told Derek in May. On a Sunday evening, after dinner, when the kids were upstairs and the house had that specific quiet that falls at the end of the weekend, she sat across from him at the kitchen table and said she wanted a divorce. He stared at her. Because of the hospital thing, he said finally. It wasn't a question. It was the thing closest to an acknowledgement that he was capable of, and she understood that he was not wrong. Not just that, she said, but that was when I finally admitted it to myself. He left the room. He came back. He said things that ranged from defensive to something that might have been genuine feeling. She couldn't always tell with Derek, and that was part of the problem. He asked if they could try counseling. She said she'd already decided. He said she was doing this because of the cancer scare, making drastic decisions from fear. She said very quietly, Derek, I nearly died. And the thing I felt most clearly in that hospital was relief that I had a reason not to come home. That's not fear, that's an answer. He didn't have anything to say to that. The divorce took 14 months. There were difficult conversations and some ugly ones, and stretches of enforced civility for the sake of the children, and stretches that were unexpectedly decent. She stayed in the house until it sold, then found an apartment in a building near the hospital, close enough to see the lake from her kitchen window on clear days. She went back to nursing. Not immediately. Her body needed more time than she initially gave it credit for, but she returned to Kelowna General in the autumn following the divorce, first in a reduced capacity, then full shifts as her stamina rebuilt. It felt like putting on something she'd left in a drawer for so long she'd forgotten its shape, and then discovering it still fit. Her colleagues were welcoming in the unceremonious way of busy wards, which was exactly what she needed. Not fuss. Just usefulness. Just the quiet dignity of being someone who knew how to help. She called her mother every Sunday, and her mother now asked, "How are you really?" And Evelyn actually answered. "Tired," she'd say, "but the good kind." Her mother understood the distinction. There was a night, the following February. She remembered it specifically because there had been a late snowfall. The kind that surprised Kelowna every few years. The kind that turned the city quiet and temporary and new. When she was walking home from the hospital, midnight, the snow still coming down in slow, unhurried flakes, and she stopped on the sidewalk in front of her building and stood still for a moment. The street was empty. The snow made everything soft. Her breath rose and disappeared. She was 42 years old. She was a nurse. She had a daughter who called her on her lunch breaks, and a son who was learning, slowly, to see her as a person rather than a given. She had survived surgery, and a marriage, and 15 years of quiet diminishment. She was cold and tired and her feet hurt, and she was going to go upstairs and make chamomile tea, and she was going to be absolutely fine. She stood in the snow a little longer than she needed to. Then she went inside.